The richest families in America don't buy iPhones, designer logos, or new cars. They buy 5 specific things quietly, repeatedly, for generations. And once you see what they are, you'll understand why old money stays old money while new money disappears within 2 generations. Old money isn't louder, it's smarter. It doesn't chase trends. It doesn't buy the newest anything. It doesn't display wealth. It preserves it through 5 specific purchasing patterns that look almost invisible to outsiders, but that compound over decades into the kind of generational stability most people will never understand. Today, we're exposing exactly what the wealthiest 1% buys that the rest of the world avoids, and why their version of expensive is actually 10x cheaper than yours over a lifetime. The thing at number 1 is so quiet, so subtle, that most poor people see it and don't even register it as wealth. But it's the single biggest difference between people who stay rich and people who lose it all. Let's get into it. Before we name the 5 things, you need to understand one rule that governs how old money thinks, because once you see it, every purchasing decision they make starts to make sense. Old money buys assets. New money buys status. That single sentence explains everything. When new money makes its first $500,000, it buys a Mercedes, a Rolex, a Louis Vuitton wallet, things that depreciate the second you own them. When old money inherits $5 million, it buys land, art, custom-made clothing, and watches you've never heard of, things that hold or grow value for decades. The difference isn't taste. It isn't style. It isn't even really about money. It's about time. Old money thinks in 30-year horizons. New money thinks in 30-day horizons. And every purchase reflects which timeline you're playing on. Here's the part nobody tells you. Most of what looks expensive in modern culture, luxury sneakers, designer handbags, performance cars, celebrity perfumes, is actually new money behavior. Loud, fast, visible, depreciating. Real wealth doesn't move that way. It moves quietly, slowly, and almost invisibly. Now let me show you the 5 things old money actually buys and why poor people avoid every single one of them. Walk into a room of old money men and you won't see a single visible logo. No Gucci belts, no Louis Vuitton ties, no Versace prints. What you'll see instead is something far less obvious and far more expensive. Bespoke suits from Savile Row tailors that cost $7,000 to $15,000 each, with no logos anywhere on the garment. Hand-finished shirts from Italian houses that take 3 fittings to perfect. Cashmere sweaters from Loro Piana that look like a basic pullover but cost $3,000. The reason is simple. Logos are a form of advertising. You're paying the brand to use your body as a billboard. Old money refuses to do that. Their clothing is meant to fit them perfectly, not announce who made it. Here's where the math gets interesting. A bespoke suit from Anderson and Shepherd in London costs $10,000, but it lasts 25 years with proper alterations. That's $400 per year of cost. A Hugo Boss suit costs $700 and falls apart in 4 years. That's $175 per year, but the bespoke suit looks dramatically better, fits flawlessly, and signals taste rather than aspiration. But here's where it really pays off. Old money men get the same suit altered, refitted, and relined for decades. The labor cost on alterations is a fraction of buying new clothes. By the time a new money man has cycled through 6 Hugo Boss suits, an old money man has worn the same Anderson and Shepherd suit for 25 years and still looks better in every photo. Poor people avoid bespoke clothing because the upfront cost feels insane. Old money buys it because the lifetime cost is cheaper and the signal is permanent. This is the one nobody talks about, and it might be the biggest wealth preservation habit there is. Old money doesn't replace things, they repair them. A leather briefcase that's 40 years old gets restitched and reconditioned every 3 years. A pair of John Lobb shoes from 1985 has been resold 6 times and still gets worn weekly. A Jaeger-LeCoultre watch from 1972 has been serviced every 5 years and runs perfectly today. Compare that to new money. A designer handbag bought in 2020 falls apart by 2024 and gets thrown away. A pair of designer sneakers wears out in 18 months and gets replaced. A trendy new watch loses its appeal in a year and sits in a drawer forever. The math is brutal once you actually run it. The richest families in America have personal cobblers, leather repairers, watchmakers, and tailors they've used for generations. The cost of a $200 resole is a fraction of the cost of replacing $1,200 shoes. The cost of a $300 watch service is a fraction of the cost of a new $5,000 watch every 4 years. But here's the part that should genuinely change how you think. Real wealth includes relationships with craftsmen. The wealthy don't just buy products, they buy ongoing service contracts with the people who can keep their things running for life. A 60-year-old leather briefcase isn't just a bag. It's proof that the owner has had a relationship with the same leather repair shop for 4 decades. That kind of continuity is invisible to outsiders. But to old money, it's the entire point. The product isn't the purchase. The relationship is. Poor people avoid repair culture because it feels harder than just buying new. Old money does it because it's how you turn a $1,000 purchase into a 50-year asset. Here's a pattern you'll see consistently across genuinely wealthy families. They don't blow money on $30,000 weekend trips to Dubai, $5,000 dinners at celebrity restaurants, or $2,000 nightclub bottles. Those are new money behaviors designed to be visible, photographed, and posted on Instagram. Old money buys land, farms, houses, vacation homes that stay in the family for generations, vineyards, forests, stretches of coastline that are passed down in trusts. The reason is simple. Experiences disappear the moment they end. The $30,000 Dubai trip is gone. The Instagram photos fade. There's nothing left except a credit card statement. Land, on the other hand, compounds. A 50-acre property in upstate New York, bought in 1985 for $200,000, is worth $4 million today. Across 4 generations, that single purchase has paid for college tuition, weddings, business investments, and retirements. But here's what makes this different from typical real estate investing. Old money doesn't flip houses. They don't speculate. They buy slow, hold forever, and use the property as the family anchor. A vacation home in Maine bought 80 years ago is where 4 generations have spent every summer. The cost basis is essentially zero. The cultural value is incalculable. Poor people avoid this because it requires patience and capital they don't have. New money avoids it because it doesn't generate Instagram content. Old money builds entire identities around it and watches the value compound for centuries. If this is changing how you think about wealth, hit subscribe because the next 2 things are where it gets really interesting. Everyone knows old money sends their kids to Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. But that's not the education I'm talking about. The real old money education investment isn't the Ivy League degree. It's the before college education, and it costs more than most people's houses. Boarding schools like Phillips Exeter, Choate, and Lawrenceville cost $70,000 to $90,000 per year, per child, for 4 years before college. That's $360,000 minimum just to attend the right high school. Then there's summer programs, but not basketball camp or coding boot camps. We're talking about classical violin training in Vienna, sailing programs in Newport that cost $25,000 for 6 weeks, Mandarin immersion in Beijing, equestrian instruction with Olympic coaches. By the time an old money child is 18, their parents have spent $1.5 to $3 million on education alone. Not on tuition, on networks, on exposure, on the relationships that compound over the next 60 years. Here's why poor people avoid this. The upfront cost is staggering, and the return is invisible for decades. But here's the math that explains everything. The friends a child makes at boarding school become their business partners at age 30. The summer program contacts become investment introductions at age 40. The professors who wrote their college recommendations open doors at age 50. By the time an old money kid is 60, every meaningful relationship in their life traces back to those teenage years their parents quietly funded. New money sends their kids to public school and assumes they'll figure it out. Old money builds the network 20 years before the network is needed. That's the real education premium, and it's why old money stays old money across multiple generations. This is the one most people will never understand, and it's the single biggest difference between rich and wealthy. The wealthiest people in America buy time. They buy services that give them their hours back. They buy lifestyles that don't require their constant attention. They buy the freedom to do nothing and to do it for as long as they want. What does that actually look like? Personal assistants who handle calendars, scheduling, and life logistics. Estate managers who run multiple properties without the owner having to think about them. Financial advisors who manage portfolios without daily input. Drivers, chefs, housekeepers, gardeners, not for status, but because every hour those tasks would take is an hour the owner gets back to spend with family, on hobbies, or doing absolutely nothing. Here's the math that nobody talks about. The wealthiest 1% values their time at $1,000 to $5,000 per hour. If a task can be delegated for $50 an hour, they delegate it instantly, because their time is worth 20 to 100 times that. New money tries to do everything themselves to save money. Old money pays others to handle everything because their time is the most expensive asset they own. But here's what makes this fundamentally different from typical luxury services. Old money doesn't just buy convenience, they buy the ability to do nothing. To sit on a porch in Maine for 6 weeks without checking email. To read for 4 hours in the middle of the day. To take a 3-hour lunch with their grandchildren. To say no to opportunities because they've already won. That kind of unstructured time is the rarest currency in modern life. And it's the thing poor people are most likely to misunderstand. Most people see a wealthy person doing nothing and think they're lazy. In reality, that's the exact moment they're most clearly demonstrating their wealth. Doing nothing, comfortably, indefinitely, without anxiety, is the highest form of luxury. And it's the one new money can never afford, no matter how much they earn. 5 things. 5 different categories. 1 shared philosophy. Bespoke clothing. Repair culture. Land. Education networks. Time. What do they have in common? None of them are visible on Instagram. None of them photograph well. None of them generate viral content. They're all slow, quiet, and invisible to outsiders. That's the entire pattern. Old money invests in things that compound over decades while looking unimpressive in the moment. New money invests in things that look impressive immediately and lose value over decades. By the time the new money family is on their 3rd luxury car and 2nd designer wardrobe, the old money family is on the same suit, the same property, and the same craftsman they were using 30 years ago. The cumulative gap is what creates dynasties on one side and bankruptcies on the other. what this means for you. You don't need millions to apply this thinking. The logic scales down. Buy fewer, better clothes and have them altered instead of replaced. Find a shoe repair shop and use it. Skip the trendy weekend trip and put the money in an index fund. Spend on education that builds networks. And most importantly, protect your time like it's the asset it actually is. Old money isn't a bank account. It's a way of thinking about purchases that compounds for 30 years instead of 30 days. The richest people in America aren't who you think they are. They're not loud. They're not flashy. They're not on your Instagram feed. They're sitting on a porch in Maine, wearing a 25-year-old sweater, owning a piece of land that's been in the family for 4 generations. And they're building wealth that will outlast every brand currently dominating modern culture.